Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. Welcome to the lesson 5. The topic says, God fight for you. God fights for you. It's in October 25 to 31st. The key text is from the book of Joshua chapter 10 verse 42. And it says, And Joshua captured all these kings and their land at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for them. I shall repeat, and Joshua captured all these kings and their land at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for the Israel. And we can see that there's a serious question that are raised by the concept of this divine or holy wall, a divine wall or a holy wall that is portraying a group of people of God, the God-given, a group of God that are given mandate to destroy another group. This issue of divine war is in the Old Testament is challenging, and God appears in the Old Testament as a sovereign Lord, the Lord of the universe. Therefore, everything that happens must somehow be related to His will, either directly or indirectly. So, these questions that arise: how could a group that is chosen by God start a war or fight or even involve themselves in a war? They are given even the mandate to destroy another group. How could it be? And we know that God is sovereign, like God is everything. So anything that happens or anything that happens in the universe must be somehow related to God. It could be either directly or indirectly. So there is somehow that this war, this divine war, this holy war, it's somehow related to God. Another question arose: how could God allow the group that He chose to fight against another group and even given the mandate to destroy them? How could it be? So the question is, how can God allow such kind of a thing? And last week we saw that God Himself is involved in a conflict that is far greater than any war in the human history. This week we are going to explore the complexity of divine worlds, the limitations, the conditions of this divine war, and the final vision of a peace. At the end of it all, we shall see peace, that we will be able to study the limitations that were given in this war, the conditions that were given in this war that were involved, and now the final vision of the peace. Sunday part says the Canaanites' iniquity, or what Canaanites did. We all know that Canaanites, the end things that they did. And in the book of Leviticus that we're given to study, Leviticus chapter 18, verse 24 says, defile not yourself in any of these things, for in all these the nations are defied, which are cast out before you. And he was telling the Israelites, don't defile yourself, or don't involve yourself in these things. For all the nations that involves themselves in these things, I cast them out of you. I cast them out before you. And we remember the land that was given to them, the Canaan. The people of the Canaan, the ones called now the Canaanites, they defined themselves by engaging themselves in activities of like child sacrificing, divination, sorcery and witchcraft, democracy and spiritualism. And because of that, God defied them and it was given mandate for them to be destroyed. Does it mean that God is not it's not merciful? As we continue with the lesson, we shall see how merciful God He is. But remember that what Canaanite iniquity include child sacrificing, divination, sorcery, witchcraft, spiritualism, and democracy. The Canaanite religion is based on the belief that natural phenomena which assured fertility were controlled by sexual relationship. So they used to believe what controls fertility, it is controlled or it is a relationship, it is a sexual relationship between the gods and the goddesses, those idols that they used to have. Thus they used to envision the sexual activities in terms of their own sexual behavior by them themselves engaging in that sexual behavior and engaging in ritual sexual practices in order for them to incite or to motivate the gods and the goddesses to do likewise. So when they motivate the gods and the goddesses, they used to believe that now they have they are fertile, the fertility is there. And the eradication of Canaanite then was not an afterthought, or something that emerged in the wake of God's decision to give the land of the Canaanite to an Israelite. So it's not something that just come out of it, like it's just out of nowhere it is there. No, God gave them a chance. Inhabitants of Canaan were granted a time of probation. And as we all know, in our courts, we have a time of probation, a time when you observe, you're given some time of mercy to observe, for these people to observe your behavior. So even these Canaanites were given a time of probation, a time of additional mercy, during which they earned an opportunity to discover God. They earned an opportunity. They were given that time of mercy. It's not that God is not merciful. Despite he is engaged in this war, let's understand that still God cares for them. It's only that God wanted to show justice and peace. He is merciful, he is caring, he is loving too. So he gave them a probation, a time for mercy, an extended mercy. And the same way he gives to us an extended mercy. They earned a good opportunity to discover God and his character. They earned a chance, but they squandered it and continued in their horrific practices. They earned a chance, but they didn't use it well. They squandered it. Manipat says supreme judge, the supreme judge. And now we see it in Psalms chapter 50 verse 6 says, and the heavens shall declare his righteousness, for God is judge himself. God is judge himself. Now in Psalms 96 verse 10 says, say among the heathen that the Lord layeth the word also shall be established, that it shall not be moved, and he shall judge the people righteously. So this all verses tells us like God is the judge. He will judge people righteously. God himself, he is a judge. The holiness of God's character means that he cannot tolerate sin. That's the holiness of God. He is holy, so he can never tolerate sin. He is patient. Despite he cannot tolerate sin, he is still patient with the children of him. He's still patient with the people of the world. And he feel like he want to give them an extended mercy, a probation time for them to come back. However, sin must reap its final consequences, which is death. So despite that God can never tolerate sin, despite that God is patient, sin must reap its final consequences. And we say, what is the payments, or the what sin, the final consequences of sin, it's death. So Yahweh declared a war against sin, regardless of where it was found, whether in Israel or among the Canaanites. Israel were not sanctified through participating in holy wars any more than other nations were. So God declares sin where it is sin. Whether you have found it in a home or food, it is sin where it is sin. And now the Bible, the lesson tells us that God did not uh, regardless of the Israelites, they were participating in holy wars. It didn't mean that he is not to declare sin unto them. They were not sanctified by them participating in holy wars. They still end to pay. If there is sin, then God will declare sin where it is sin. And the same way, if you are a preacher and you say that I'm a preacher, you are not sanctified by being a preacher. I'm not sanctified by being a preacher. If I do sin, God declares sin where it is sin, despite anywhere, whether in Israel, whether in Canaanite. He does it. God does never tolerate sin. Even when they became the means of Yahweh's judgment against the chosen people, his chosen nation, he didn't say that he have to favor them. Where there is sin, it must be said. Tuesday part says dispossession or annihilation. Dispossession or annihilation. I will send an angel in Exodus chapter 3 verse 2. I will send an angel before thee, and I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivites, and the Jebusite. I will deliver them out of them. Exodus 34 verse 11 says, observe thou that which I command this day. Behold, I will drive out before the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, all the people. And God's original purpose for Canaanite was not annihilation, but instead disposition. In order to maintain or to avoid contamination, Israelites aimed to destroy all the elements that were propagating corruption. So God's purpose for the Canaanite was not annihilation, but instead depossession. And because these Canaanites were very corrupt, in order for God to avoid contamination with the people of Israel, now the end to destroy the element that would bring in corruption. So that's why they end to destroy them. However, all the inhabitants of Canaan, despite that, you see, to avoid contamination for the people of Israel, they end to eliminate or to destroy the elements that were propagating corruption. However, all the inhabitants of the Canaan, those who on an individual basis recognized the God's sovereignty prior to the conquest or even during the conquest, were able to escape through immigration. So those who understood how God is powerful, how God is everything, how God can do, and they knew what they did, the sins. So they were able to disappear. They were able to escape from the land of Canaan through immigration. So the other hand just handed their heart and they said, we will fight them. We are not going to live here. And they thought they will fight with the God. But you can never fight with God. The only part of Canaanite population doomed to destruction were those who withdrew into fortified cities and continued to rebel against God's plan for the Israelites, and they hardened their heart. So for those, not all Canaanites that were destroyed, but for those who rebelled against the will of God, for them to give the Israelites the land, those are the ones that were destroyed because they hardened their hearts and they rebelled. Now we understand that God is merciful. He gave them time. And those who obeyed, they escaped through immigration. Those who were left, they rebelled against God's plan. And they hardened their hearts. And because of that, there was no other option. They were destroyed. But next part says free choice. Free choice. Deuteronomy chapter 20 verse 10 says, when thou comes high unto a city to fight against it, then proclaim peace unto it. This tells us that they were given instructions or conditions. When you go to that city, then proclaim peace. If you want to engage, if you receive an answer of peace, then live with them. They will be there to as slaves for you, for the Israelites now. But if they will not proclaim peace and agree with you about peace, and they bring war, that is when you are acting against the will of God. And that's what happened. And the lesson says the Hebrew word of destruction, which is cherem, refers to what is banned, what is damned, what is dedicated to annihilation. So it refers to something that is dedicated to be destroyed. It designates complete and irrevocable presence of people, animals, and inanimate object in God's exclusive domain, which in warfare involved. Into our lives now, we have an existence of sin. We are applying what our Israelites did by hardening their hearts. And into our lives still we have an existence of sin. Yes, sin is in the word. And because the sin is in the word, there is no space for anyone to stand on neutral. You have to be on the side of God or the side of the devil. One side leans to life and eternal life. The other side leans to death and eternal death. The practice of total destruction describes God's righteous judgment against sin and evil. So because there was that total destruction for the Israelites, it describes the God's righteous judgment against the sin and evil. Those who came under the ban of destruction were consistently rebelling against God's purpose. So those who were destroyed, they rebelled against God's purpose. They defined themselves, never repenting either. Therefore, God's decision to destroy them was neither arbitrary nor nationalistic. So for God to destroy them, it was not because they are Canaanite. It's because they are not his nation. No, it was never nationalistic for them to destroy them. Those who benefited from the relationship with Yahweh could lose their privileged status through rebellion. And if in our lives today there is sin existence, if we cannot agree with God, we all rebel against his plan, then we are going to face a total destruction. And it's a God's way of judgment. The last part says price of peace. The price of peace. The price or the prince. The prince of peace. Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6. 6 says, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon it, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. The Messiah is depicted as a Prince of Peace. He will usher in a kingdom dominated by peace. We see after given the condition limitations, we see now finally it is peace. And it will be brought by this Messiah. He will bring in a kingdom that is dominated by peace, where the lion and the lamb will graze together. That's a miracle. A lion and the lamb will graze together, in which there will be no destruction, there will be no hurt, and where peace will rule and flow like a river. May God bless us with peace, where it will rule and flow like a river. Consider story of feeding the Syrian army at the initiative of Elisha. Instead of massacring him, he showcased to them the supreme ideal. And peace has always been God's desire for his people. The time of the Syrian army. And it concludes that peace has always been the God's desire for his people. All he desires for us to have is peace, 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 to be flowing like a river. Perpetual conflict. We see that as much as God is involved in a cosmic conflict that also affected our planet, the final goal of redemption is not a perpetual conflict or even an internal subjugation of the enemy in a state of slavery, but instead an everlasting peace. So in as much as God is involved in this whole conflict, it doesn't mean that he is there for conflict. He is not willing, he is not there for them to fight for the victory. No, all he wants is everlasting peace. And all he is trying to do is to bring justice and peace. Where there is no justice, he brings justice. Where there is no peace, he brings peace. But he is not there to act like he wants to win. He is not driven by victory. He is driven by peace and justice. And I was looking at the meaning of perpetual conflict. That is an ongoing disagreement that cannot be solved by one-time compromise. Or you can define it as a lasting state of war that has a war condition that will lean. That is war condition that has no war condition that will lead to its conclusion. It's something that you don't have a clear details when will it end. And it's the war that we have right now, the great controversy. We know it will end, but you have no clear details when it will end. We know when Christ comes, but you know when Christ will come. We don't have those clear details when it will end. Friday part says, the cosmic conflict and the motive of God as a judge are crucial in understanding these wars against the Canaanites. This conflict and the motive of God now being a judge, it is so crucial for you to understand. Because if you don't understand this, then you begin to say God is not love, but God is love. If you can understand God standing as a judge, and in these times of conflict, it is good for you because you'll be able to understand and be able to answer others when questions arise. He gave the wicked nation a time of probation. So, because he gave them, he is God of mercy, that they might become acquainted with him and his character. Through their iniquity, they were gradually bringing themselves to the point where God's forbearance could no longer be exercised. Because of their iniquity, every day they were bringing they were bringing God to a point that he is not bearing. Every time he tried to bear for them, but they were trying to bring him to an extent that is not bearable, until the point was reached and the iniquity was full. The vigilancy of God would be delayed. All nations had a period of probation. Those who made void God's law would advance from one degree of wickedness to another. And it's because of that they were destroyed. Children would inherit this rebellious spirit of their parent and do worse than their fathers before them until God's wrath would fall upon them. The punishment was not less because it differed, but God aimed to do it. He gave them every nation and a time of probation, but some of them rebelled, and they continued to rebel, and God had no other option than for total destruction. May God bless you. Let's meet for the next lesson, the enemy within.